Okay, well, let's speak now to Zwelinzima Vavi, the General-Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Mr. Vavi, good afternoon to you. So, Sizwe Pamela from COSATU, an organisation you know well, saying that the shrinkage in our economy and our economic situation is the fault of our government. They bear ultimate responsibility. Do you agree?
I have to agree. Perfectly correct. The economy, before there was a crisis, was in a crisis. Before we spoke about this current massive levels of job losses, we were in a job loss crisis, we were in a poverty crisis, we were in a landless crisis, and we were in an inequality crisis. These particular figures would have not been as bad as they are had we long time ago restructured the economy away from a colonial posting of extraction of mineral resources and then taking them out of the economy to be beneficiated in mass elsewhere and then come back to South Africa as finished products. We would have been seeing a more robust manufacturing sector. We would have seen more robust transport, public transport that is much more resilient, a retail sector that is based on South Africa ownership, and in particular into the party of the previously disadvantaged communities. Our economy is found absolutely vulnerable by COVID-19, and that vulnerability is now shown by the fact that we've seen a decline of 51%. I mean, this is just unheard of. This is shocking beyond what you can describe. We know what is going to be the consequences of that. We're already dealing with those consequences. Our organizers have been turned to managers of Section 189. Workers are losing their jobs left, right, and center. And the point that SAFTU is making is that we can't just be sitting ducks. We are refusing that the crisis that was not created by us must be resolved at the workers' backs.
Mr. Vavi, I mean, you and I have been discussing, sometimes arguing about the economy for over a decade. Do you think anything's different now? Is anyone going to implement any kind of solution or intervention now?
It's going to be very difficult because the longer time we took to do anything about sorting out the colonial structure of our economy, the more we got vulnerable. Our manufacturing sector has been in a crisis for some time, as you know. The figure that we always quote is that our manufacturing sector used to contribute around 20-21% to the GDP. That has now declined before this COVID crisis to around 12-13%. That's a massive decline of the manufacturing sector. Had we taken ownership of our mineral resources, had we began to transform those minerals into a higher value in South Africa, had we beneficiated our minerals here in South Africa, had we built secondary industries here in South Africa and created jobs here in South Africa, we would have not been as vulnerable as we are now in the face of the lockdown. The lockdown will eventually impact every economy in the world, the US included, but the levels of the impact will be even greater to the countries that still, 26 years into democracy, were as designed by the colonialists when they arrived here 400 years ago.
There's something sort of amazing about the lack of action. And let me give you an example. I don't think there's any political argument in the release of spectrum for cell phone networks to provide cheaper data for 5G internet. I don't see it as a left-wing versus right-wing argument. It's not something you argue about. It's a technical thing. And yet, just last week, that was delayed again. I was reminded earlier today that, in fact, it's been 13 years since we've had spectrum released.
Absolutely. It's not just one example, Stephen, as you know. There are countless examples that government action would have made a big difference on a number of issues. Let's look at the state of our education. Let's look at how our own kids here compete and compare with their counterparts everywhere else in the world when it comes to the critical subjects of today, the mathematics, the science, and all of that. We are not doing what we every day promise that we're going to be doing. Why did we allow our health institution, our public health in particular, to collapse and to be exposed in the manner that it has been exposed during the COVID crisis? Why did we do something about ensuring that the land question and the land hunger on the part of the greater majority of our people is addressed ages ago? Why are we doing nothing about the cost of data in South Africa, and yet every day we continuously say we are moving towards a industrial revolution or a fourth industrial revolution? And yet the instruments that will make us to be better players there are left untransformed. We are allowing 3-4 big corporations that are playing the space of cell phone to milk our people. And when clearly we know, the government knows that when you compare our data cost with the rest of the African continent and the world, we are way, way, way above. So there are so many basic things that are not even ideological. Why did we collapse ESCOM? Because ESCOM has been the main driver why we're finding ourselves in a recession before the COVID crisis. Why did we collapse PRASA? Why did we collapse DINEL, SAA? All of these were engines of the apartheid and colonial economy. Why did we take advantage of ensuring that a new DINEL, a new PRASA, all of these state-owned enterprises give us the niche that we so desperately need to industrialize, to build local economy, to localize, and to make sure that our mining inputs are developing a stronger industrial manufacturing base for South Africa. In a way, COSATU is so spot on when they say it is the government that has brought us into this corner. It's a pity that they have been voting for the same government, even though they can see that the main victims of this economic mismanagement is the constituency that they represent.
Mr. Vavi, obviously there's a lot of history. I do want to ask you, if you don't mind, about clicks. And we've seen the racist, the offensive advert. Clicks saying today that the people who were responsible for posting it, now obviously we know it was created by Tresemme, an American brand. Clicks now taking that product off the shelves. Also the economic freedom fighters. I suppose the right word is forcing Clicks to close stores. How do you feel about all of this?
We are as outraged as any other person in South Africa, be those people black, but in particular black people. But I know that lots of other white counterparts and patriots in South Africa are as angry as anybody could be at Clicks taking an aim at the dignity of the black majority and insult it in the manner that that advert is seeking to do. We are disgusted, and we support all of those that are standing out and protesting against this advert. And we also demand that the whole value chain of production of that advert, that management must immediately be put on suspension and be dismissed eventually. How could 26 years down the line you will have some bureaucrat? And we hope that not senior people, we hope that the CEO didn't approve this. And we reject the notion that only the junior officials and employees must now carry the can. The entire value chain of the people who designed, who double-checked the quality, and who eventually approved that this thing can go to the public, all of those people deserve to be fired. So we insist, however, that the protest must remain protest. We've listened to the leadership of the EFF saying that their demonstrations will remain, peaceful, and we call upon all of our people who are protesting to please keep those protests powerful, militant, but still within the ambits of the law. They must be peaceful, otherwise we will lose the broader discussion and debate about this matter by getting our actions sidetracking the focus away from the real issue of racism on the part of this company into the violence and trashing of the stores.